Okay, we'll begin. We've discussed in previous weeks the various parts of the neshamah, the nefesh, ruach, neshamah, haya, and yehida. We also spoke about hasharat nefesh, which is an important principle in Judaism, that the spirit, the neshamah, is eternal, that it is the essence of the human being, the most important part of the human being, the ikar. And we showed a video on how people have experienced NDE, a near-death experience, where they were able to see themselves. They were able to see their body, they were floating above their body, the various experiences that they had, that somewhat proves that there's something else to the body, something other than the body. The ikar ha'ani, the ikar of an individual, is therefore the neshama, not the body. And the body, all it is a garment that the neshama needs to get into in this world in order to be able to function. After all, this is olam ha'asiyah, the world of deeds. And in the physical world of deeds, one needs to have a physical levush, a physical garment where the neshama can function. But the ikar of the person, the essence of who we all are, is really the neshama. Now, to go into a little bit more deeply into how we know that the neshama is the most important part of us, and that we really should follow the neshama's wishes and not the bodily wishes. If one looks around, one can easily observe how the human being's body, nahut, is inferior to everything else in creation. The human being has so many needs, is so dependent on others. As a baby, he's definitely not on his own. Until he grows up and he's mature and becomes independent, he has to work so hard to make a living. Right? Everything is so difficult. And that is why David HaMelech, in pointing out the difference between the guf and the neshama in Perek Chet in Tehillim, says like this: when I look up to the sky and I see your handiwork, the moon, the stars, everything that you have made, why is the human being so significant that you should speak about him, that you should remember him? He's so small in comparison to everything else that you've created in this world. However, now he switches over to the neshama. But you've made him so special by giving him the neshama, which is a part of God, something close to God himself. I mean, not that we're close, but something very divine. And as a result of that divine spark that we all have, tamshileu b'ma'aseh yadecha kol shata tachat raglav. As a result of that neshama, that godliness in us, we have been given shilton or control over this world. In other words, we have a tremendous responsibility, and that responsibility is as a result of receiving this neshama. So there's two parts to us. One which is really inferior, which is so insignificant, if you look around compared to everything else. Nonetheless, there is this neshama that has been given the shilton, control over this world. Therefore, when it comes to the spiritual aspect of the human being, he's really unique in this world. There's nothing else like him, as we've explained when we spoke about creation, that he's the only one that is endowed with a neshama, and the Torah is very clear about that in the creation of the human being, that he was given a neshama. And that's what makes him unique. And in Pirkei Avot, the rabbis tell us, Hiba yetera noda'at lo, that this information was given to him, was recorded in the Torah as a favor to him, because he's so precious, that he's being told and being reminded that you are unique, you are special. In other words, this information was given to him. He doesn't really have to discover it. We are told that we are more special than anything else in this world because of the neshama. The greatest pele, the greatest miracle of all, perhaps the greatest wonder, is that this spiritual neshama can actually exist or coexist with a physical body. And when do we speak in amazement about this wonder, about this connection? When we come out of the bathroom and we say Asher Yatzar. We say Ki hu harofeh kol basar umafli la'asot. What's mafli la'asot? He does something so wondrous that he's able to put a neshama, which is something spiritual, into a physical body. How do you accomplish that? Not only does he do that, he maintains the two together. The neshama being like a ruach, like a wind, does not leave, even though we're full of holes. So that in itself is a big wonder, but obviously HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it so that the two can live together, can coexist together, and that the neshamah remains in him as long as, he's alive. This neshamah that we're speaking so much about expresses itself, even though we cannot see it, it expresses itself in certain ways. And it's important for us to recognize how the neshamah expresses itself if we want to see that there is a neshamah out there. Otherwise, you have to wait for an NDE, which I don't recommend. That no one here should have an NDE. But other than that, there are ways that you can see how the neshamah expresses itself, and how the body, of course, expresses itself. One of the most important ways that the neshamah expresses itself is in its desire, lit'alot, in its desire to grow spiritually, in its desire to do things according to some ethical value, nothing to do with a physical need. In other words, the expression of the neshamah is totally different than the expression or the needs of the guf. If we were to pay attention to our neshamah, we would hear it say, I want to do something good. I want to help someone. And it's not out of compassion or mercy and all these kind of traits that we may have, but it's truly in the subconscious of every human being, the desire lit'alot, to better himself, the desire to do something which is right and ethical. That is part of the expression of the neshamah, not the body. Then there is, of course, the expression of the neshamah that is seen through da'at, knowledge. It's not just the jelly, the gray piece of jelly that we have in the brain that stores all that information. The potential for receiving all this da'at and the ability to process it is in the neshamah. Even though we need the physical brain to store it and so forth, nevertheless, the neshamah is given da'at. Ata honen ladam da'at. Right? We say it in the Amidah too. Very important part of the ability of the neshamah. The third ability, which we will talk about separately, is bechira chofshit. That is the ability of the neshamah to exercise free will. We also mentioned the fact that the neshamah has the koach hadibur, it has the ability of speech, plus the fact that the neshamah also has certain feelings, but they're not ordinary feelings. The feelings of ahava and yirah, love and fear of Hashem especially. These are all embodied in the neshamah itself. These are expressions of the neshamah. The expressions of the body are all the bodily needs. Whether it's the physical intimacy between a husband and wife, whether it's food, whether it's sleep, all of these are the way the body expresses itself. In other words, the needs that it needs to have. Plus, on top of that, you have the more spiritual. I call them more spiritual because they're not purely physical. They only come about as a result of the nefesh being very close to the body, and they are kin'at, ta'ava, v'kavod, which are also physical, in a sense, physical needs. That is jealousy, the desire of kavod or honor, and the pursuit after ta'avot, after all the pleasures in this world. All of that, all of these desires and all of these needs, what they create in the human being is they make of him something incomplete, something that is always in need of something. In other words, he's not satisfied until he receives, until he gets these things. He's therefore called haser. He's missing something. He's not complete because of the needs that he always has. Now the problem is that the continuous desire of all these yitzarim, of all these needs, of all these instincts that every human being has, the continuous and repeated desires and the regular desires that we all have, what they cause is a certain emphasis on fulfilling your own personal needs first before doing anything for somebody else. We know this word or this term as selfishness. A person is selfish because first and foremost his body has a continuous need to satisfy himself, and because of this continuous drive to satisfy himself, the human being, the body of the human being is really always more concerned about itself. That's just the way nature is. We are concerned about ourselves. However, now we have to introduce the neshamah. There is, however, a conduct in this world where the neshamah, I guess, we can use the word neshamah in this case, the spiritual part of the human being wants to express itself or act according to a higher set of values. Nothing to do with the body. In other words, other than the body and the physical needs that we have, which causes us to think of ourselves, there is another type of behavior, all right, let's call it behavior, or hanhaga, conduct, which is really being expressed by the neshamah, and that is what? To do things, not according to a bodily need, because we're talking about the neshamah, but to do something that is based on a set of values, morals, whatever you want to call it. When somebody thinks of doing something according to that higher set of values or morals, what he's really listening to is the kol ha-neshama. It's the voice of his neshama. It's not a physical bodily need. In other words, these two exist. Either it's the bodily need, which brings about selfishness and a concern for oneself, or he can choose to listen to another type of conduct, which has nothing to do with the physical body, but is dependent on a higher set of values or morals that he can live by too. So what do we see so far, the difference between the body and the neshama? That the functions of the body are everything that pleases me, everything that makes me happy, everything that I feel good. That's the function of the body. In other words, do whatever you can to please yourself, to make yourself happy. That's the yetzer of the guf. And that needs to be there. If a person would not have this, by the way, he would die of hunger. In other words, when we feel hungry, it's because our body is signaling to us, you need to eat. So in other words, so we need to have this yetzer. It's not bad. The problem is a lot of people misuse it. But that's what the function of the body is to really concern itself with itself. Nothing wrong with that if you don't overdo it. Take care of yourself. Take care of your weight. Don't overeat. Go jogging a little bit. Exercise or whatever it is. Don't smoke. Take care of your body. The problem is if people overdo it, they become very selfish. They only think about themselves. But these are the bodily needs. This is the function of the body to think of itself. It has to take care of itself. Every animal does the same. It looks for food. It runs away from danger. That's the way it needs to be. The other set of morals and values is what we call the anhaga ha-musarit. That is, of course, completely concerned with who or with what? Tovat hazulat. In doing what is good for the other individual. It's completely opposite. It doesn't think about oneself. It thinks about what can I do to improve the life of the other individual. It's very interesting, but the rabbis have a term called ahava shetluya bedavar and ahava shelo tluya bedavar. Ahava is love. Love is something beautiful, right? However, there could be ahava hatluya bedavar. In other words, you do somebody a favor, so you're doing something to somebody else, not for yourself. But guess what? Why are you doing it? Because you're expecting him to do something for you too. Is that true love? That's ahava hatluya bedavar. There's some interest here. Either it's physical or something that you're anticipating or you're hoping for. It's not pure, it's not genuine. And then there's ahava shelo tluya bedavar, completely pure, not dependent on anything, natural. This is the most purest, of course, the form of love between two people, two individuals. If they do have that kind of a relationship, inna betela leolam, as the Rabbi tells, it will never go away no matter what happens, because it's pure. Now, how do you know the difference between if you're doing something out of pure love, or maybe you have some interest? Tzarich havchana daka, as we call it in Hebrew. You need you need a microscope to be able to really distinguish if what you're really doing is out of true, sincere love, or you're doing it because you have some interest. In other words, don't think it's so easy. Sometimes you say, I'm doing him a big favor. I'm going to be helping him out. Yeah, but why are you really doing it? Are you really doing it because you really, really want to help the man? You really care for him? Is your neshamah doing it? Or is it because you have some interest involved? So even though we're talking about the same thing, we're talking about ahava, we're talking about doing something lazulat for the other individual, not for yourself. But maybe deep down there is something in it for yourself too. I mean, that's the way politicians work, right? I give you, you give me. So in other words, don't think that just because one is doing something for somebody else that it's pure. It could be that he has an interest in it. The bottom line, yeah, go ahead, Avram. Yeah, that's my next point. That's exactly my next point. The bottom line with all these functions is obviously we all have a body, but we all have a neshamah, and as a result of this neshamah that we all have, even though it's different levels of neshamot that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew, nevertheless we all have a spiritual part to us, and since we do all have a spiritual part to us, we all have the ability to make decisions, choices, and of course lead our lives according to higher morals and higher set of values. We all have that ability because we all have that yesod. The foundation is the same. What does it depend on? Depends on our da'at, on the knowledge that we have. Where do we receive our information from? From the Torah or from other sources? From some meditation of yoga in the Himalayas? I mean, they have their own philosophies, right? It depends where you get your information from. That will determine, to an extent, what decisions you will make. But we all have this yesod, and that is the koach of the neshamah, to exercise free will to do what the neshamah wants, and not what the body wants. Now, this da'at, we spoke about the expressions of the neshamah. The neshamah expresses itself in the desire to elevate itself, to improve itself, to do the right thing, to do what is ethical and moral. The other expression of the neshamah was through the da'at, the ability to acquire information and to, of course, use that in a good way. Now, this da'at is important, right? The human being doesn't just function by instinct. He needs to process information to make a decision. So this da'at is therefore important because this da'at is what will allow him to go wherever he needs to go. In other words, this da'at is what will direct him. We describe the neshamah as the captain of the ship. It is. It's the decision maker. But how does it make the decisions? It uses kelim, it uses tools. One of them is free will. It has to have the power to decide. But what allows it to distinguish between right from wrong? That's the da'at. So da'at is very important. A person who's an amar, it's a complete ignoramus, who's lacking of da'at, will not advance too much in life. That is why learning is so important in Judaism. You need to have the da'at. The da'at will give us the direction. The da'at will give us the ability to make the decisions, together with the free will, of course. The da'at will hopefully help us get to our destination. Now, once we have the da'at, are we safe? Not necessarily, because there is a little bit of a danger with this brain, with this sechel, with this da'at. What's the danger? If we were to allow the sechel, we give it free rein, do as you're being told by the neshamah, then everything would be okay. The problem is that sometimes the sechel is not the one that is the active one in making the decision. The desires are the ones that are making the decisions. And guess what? The desires will hijack the sechel to justify what they wanted. See? So the sechel can act like an attorney too, to justify what you just did, which was based on what? On your physical desires, on the desires of the goof, not on the desires of the neshamah. So as long as the sechel is the one that's being the active one, the one that is initiating, the one that is really expressing the neshamah's wishes, then fine. Then that individual will head in the right direction. But if Chas v'Shalom, the goof is the one that is strong over here and expressing itself, and it's hijacking the sechel to justify what it does, then obviously things will not work out right. You also have to be careful with something called logic. If you study philosophy, there's different philosophies, all sorts of philosophies. There's something called existentialism. There's something called logic, and there's something called empiricism. Different philosophies. Logic is logic. What does logic say? You use your brain. What makes the most sense? What is empiricism? Based on experience. Experience is also a teacher. So there were different philosophies as to how to determine if something is true, if something is acceptable, if something is correct. Empiricism, use your experience. Logic, use your mind. The mind should be able to figure out what is more logical. But obviously, all of this is not complete and cannot be completely relied on because, as we said before, the mind can mislead it depending on how it's being used. Is the sechel the shofar of the neshamah? Or is the sechel just being used to justify? You're not using any set of values or morals? You're just using your mind? That's not good. It may not always work. Then we have the expression called free will, which we'll talk about separately, but just briefly. True free will be in the area of whether something is correct or not correct, if something is ethical or not ethical. Don't think that you have free will, complete free will, if you have to decide, am I going to have chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream? Because that depends on what your favorite is. You're not necessarily exercising free will, even though there is a degree of free will in all these actions, but that's not the real power of free will. Because we all have yetzarim utchafim, we all have all sorts of instincts and desires, physical desires. And sometimes one desire is stronger than another desire. We have the desire to sleep a little longer, but we also have the desire to go to a wedding, perhaps, because there's going to be a big buffet there. So which desire is going to be stronger? Are you going to force yourself out of the house? Oh, I'm too tired, or I want to eat. I want to enjoy myself. Are you really exercising the free will? It's yetzer hazeh yoter chazak or this yetzer yoter chazak? Which one is stronger? The free will, as we will see, B'ezrat Hashem, when we talk about b'chira chofshit, is an incredible tool to make very, very important decisions between that which is ethical, correct, or that which is not. We have to really make clear decision, and that involves completely different elements. They do not involve our yetzarim, our personal physical desires or wants. Now, what happens if a person does not have a set of values or morals, if he does not have too much dat, if he does not have clear ideas of what is right and what is wrong, then the majority of the time, most of his decisions will be based on what the Yetzer tells him to do, on what his physical needs are. Because as we said before, the human being, by his nature, without the neshamah, or without the direction of the neshamah, will basically think of himself. And were he to follow completely his neshamah, he obviously has the ability to attain great heights, great spiritual heights. Our great chachamim and tzaddikim, who of course, as a result of their dat and their Torah, use their free will to attain great heights. In other words, the dat is very important because it gives you the ability, the potential, to elevate yourself to incredible heights. Leave out the neshamah, and what happens? A person can degenerate to the lowest and the lowest of levels that you can imagine. The best proof is all the tyrants and dictators that we recently lived with or heard of. Look what they were capable of doing. In other words, a human being is a dangerous animal. Without the direction of the neshamah, he can sink to the lowest levels. With the direction of the neshamah, he has a tremendous potential of attaining the greatest heights of all. so far, what we really can see from all of this is that in this world, you really have two types. Even though you have many different types of personalities, you really have two types. You have the selfish one, who really will go after the bodily needs, after the pleasures of life, after whatever makes him happy. And you will have the one who is capable of self-sacrifice, capable of true devotion, capable of doing something for somebody else without blinking an eye. You would really think that's basically it. I mean, you have, of course, people in between. They think of themselves and they also help others. But basically, that's what you have. Who is stronger, the physical body or the neshamah? Now, even though I said that there are two types, we must remember a very important point. That throughout life, everyone over here in this room and everyone outside will always have the same struggle. And that is the struggle between the ruach and the guf. Between the neshamah and the guf. Between the ruach and the chomer. The spiritual and the physical. Everybody has a continuous struggle. And you know what this struggle is called in Judaism? Milchama ben ha-yetzer hatov ha-yetzer hara. That is the famous battle between the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, between the good inclination and the evil inclination. So in other words, everybody has this ma'avak, everybody has this continuous battle at all times, especially before important decisions that you have to make. Always have this struggle. Now, even though we're talking so highly about listening to the neshamah and being careful not to give in to the physical body, because otherwise you're thinking of yourself only. Nevertheless, a very important point to be made right now is that Judaism does not believe in dikui haguf, in suppressing the body. If you look at the world today, the East and the West, the East is exactly what they're doing, suppressing the body. Yoga, meditation, don't eat, don't drink, don't overdo this. Right? All that, for the philosophies of the East. To suppress the bodily needs. Suppress it. That's the only way to control it. Kill it. In the West, just the opposite. Haven't you heard the latest radio announcement? Or TV? Or a piece of mail that you got? You owe yourself the vacation. They're telling us you owe yourself a vacation in Hawaii. They want to make money on you, obviously. So how do they do it? They owe, you work, you must work hard. Many times they call me up, you want a cable? I said, what's that? So you can see all the TV channels, but I don't have a TV. You don't have a TV? It's like you're missing out something. You don't have a TV? How could you live without a TV? Yeah. So anyway, that's really what you have. The Western world that emphasizes all the ta'avot, all the pleasures and enjoyment and the vacations and cars, right? This is the Western world, really. And then you have the East, suppress the body, meditate, yoga, whatever, all the different kinds. Judaism says no to each one of them. It's not true. Hashem gave us a body. It's physical. It's selfish. Yes. But this body is a vehicle for the neshamah. You can't suppress it. You can't kill it. On the contrary, if you do not exaggerate the bodily needs and you just do what is necessary, you will also elevate the body. V'item kedoshim. We're not talking about the neshamah only to be holy. The body will be holy. And the body of many tzaddikim did not rot in the grave. It's still intact, even after hundreds of years, because they sanctified it, they elevated it so much. In other words, the body can become holy too. The body is important, but it needs direction, and that's where the neshamah comes in. So what's going on in the world today? We have to speak a little bit about what's going on in the world. It's very important to understand the generation that we're living in. And this really began with Christianity, and up until today it further evolved. There appears to be a certain feeling amongst certain groups of people and religions that the human being is messed up. He was born in sin. He has certain weaknesses from birth that are difficult to overcome. He's stuck with them. And this human being who's so fragile, we have to sympathize with him. We have to be forgiving to him. It's hard to change. Human beings are just like that. They need to be saved, like Christianity claims, or something else. There's a lot of people out there who believe that we have to be a little bit understanding of somebody that was abused, somebody that went through some trauma. I'm not saying that we don't have to be, but that does not excuse him. No matter what the person went through, no matter how much of an animal he is by birth, it does not excuse him. Anybody who subscribes to this belief that we have to be sympathetic and that the human being is just messed up because of his innate nature, that he's an animal in a sense, anybody who has this kind of subscribes to this belief, basically what he's doing is he's trying to liberate himself from having any conscience. That evil is something difficult to avoid. That if you're born with certain inclinations, you're stuck with them and you can't overcome them. You have to be careful from this kind of philosophy. The Rambam, in speaking about astrology, B'ezrat Hashem will be speaking about that in a couple of weeks, he comes out against it. And the reason why he comes out against astrology, there's various reasons, but one of them is because there were two schools in astrology. One school says, the way you were born, that's the way you are going to be. You can't change yourself. There's of course the other school that says, the stars impel, but they don't compel. In other words, we have inclinations, we have tendencies, but we're not forced to do as those tendencies are. So he was coming out against the ones who said, no, you were born like that, and that's it, you can't, why should we be rewarded or punished if that's the way we are? Especially those who think we're all just a bunch of molecules and atoms, there's no neshamah. Why should we be punished? Why should we be responsible? So you have to be very careful with this kind of theory. That is where the Freudian theory and others that followed him supported this kind of ideas, that the nefesh ha'adam, the human soul, has this problems or these weaknesses that are difficult for him to overcome, that he really on his own cannot completely escape from them. They are really imprisoning him. Of course, everybody has their own problems. Not everybody has all the same problems, but some people more, some people less. And based on this kind of thinking, you have to understand the individual, that there's no real way for him to get out of his troubles. According to this theory, there is no milhamah. There's no battle whatsoever that the spirit that we were talking about could win, because there is no spirit. All there is a body that is messed up, and it's not even worth trying to fight, because there's no real battle. You see where this is leading to? According to this theory, of course, the human being is not the handiwork of Hashem. The neshamah is not the captain of a ship. All you really have is a sailor in a very small, weak boat in the middle of a big storm without any direction, not knowing what to do. Does that make sense? That's what they believe. That's what a lot of people believe, that you don't really have complete control over yourself, and therefore there's no reason that you should fight and try so hard to win this war. Which leads us to the next philosophy that I mentioned before, existentialism. Existentialism. We exist. The way we believe is good for us. Whatever is good for us, whatever is good for you, that's what you should do. In other words, you create your own set of beliefs, your own set of morals, basically your own religion. Whatever makes you happy. Believe it or not, this is what many, or perhaps the majority of people believe in today. You ask them, what do you believe? Unless they're somewhat religious, nothing. I believe in just in surviving. Many people today are influenced, of course, through the media and through what they read in the papers, through this kind of a philosophy is, you got to make it in life. The American dream. You got to buy a house, you got to have a dog, you got to have a car. This is what you have to aim for. You therefore have to avoid anything that limits you. Avoid stress, of course. Avoid anything that interferes with you going after what you want to accomplish in life. Whatever is going to make you happy. This kind of heresy, if we can call it that, stems from the fact, from an old theory that don't think that this is new. Even in the past, there were philosophies, heretical philosophies, that left out God, that basically said, do whatever is good to you. You know what good is? Whatever makes you feel good. But as I've explained in the past, that's not right. That's not true at all. Pure good is whatever is tachliti, whatever leads to the purpose of life. Whatever leads to Hashem's plan, that is good. That's why Hashem said, after He created everything, this is good, this is complete, this is necessary for the world. Otherwise, if we were to allow everybody to define good, what's good for you is not necessarily good for me. But that's what this philosophy, or this way of thinking, preaches. That life has no meaning, you have no meaning. You're just here to do whatever you can to survive. So do your best to survive. And when people are basically told that they have to do their best to survive, they may do a lot of things that are wrong. Because this kind of a philosophy leaves out the neshamah. And what happens when a person leaves out the neshamah from the formula, there is no desire whatsoever to improve yourself, to elevate yourself. What did we say in the very, very beginning? That is one of the expressions of the neshamah. The desire, the interest to elevate yourself, to improve yourself, to do for others. If we leave out the neshamah, there is no desire, there's no interest to ledamot le'elyon, to be like a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Just like He's giving and He's compassionate, He wants us to be just like Him. But if we leave out the neshamah, then there's no desire, there's no interest. Does not mean they have no neshamah. No, we all have a neshamah. So what is happening to all the expressions of the neshamah? Everybody has a neshamah. So what if people have this philosophy? Well, wait a minute, the neshamah is also talking, expressing itself. Why aren't people hearing it? The neshamah's desires and interests are very adin. They're very sensitive, very quiet. Not really, they don't stand out. They're not very powerful like the yetzarim of the guf. You have to really pay close attention. You have to really, really listen to what the neshama is saying in order to really, do things differently, not by what the body wants. And since the neshama does not speak that loudly, it's more quiet. What is happening to many people today, Jews and non-Jews, is that all those functions of the neshama, all those expressions of the neshama are dormant. And as I've said many times, that part of the problem is the materialism. Because when people are so deep in materialism, Ashmen lev ha'am, the Prophet says, the people have become fat, they've become comfortable. And that makes it harder for one to hear the neshama, and it makes it harder for you to speak to someone, to convince him to come to even to a shiur. Why should I come to a shiur when I can see Super Bowl with a beer or popcorn and enjoy myself? And why should I get up and travel on the freeway for 25 minutes from Encino or from whatever if I can stay home and enjoy myself? I worked hard during the day. Somebody who gets up and goes and travels that far, it's because his neshama, Baruch Hashem, is healthy. Really, the neshama is Baruch Hashem healthy, telling you, this is more valuable than staying at home. And I don't know what else, unless of course you're learning Torah at home, that's different. But I'm saying if somebody would not be learning Torah or doing some chesed, just sit at home and do nothing, that's because he's more concerned about his bodily needs. He wants to rest, he wants to sleep, he wants to eat, he wants to enjoy a movie. And of course we all know that this is nonsense, it's shtuyot navalim. And a lot of people unfortunately do not hear the neshama. And then, therefore, what did we say before? they will automatically do what the Yetzer wants, what the body wants. If there's no real direction for the neshama, if there's no real dat, then by default, almost by default, I don't want to say default because there's always an equal chance to do both, but people are very immersed in materialism, and people, of course, are influenced by society, and they have no dat, they have no direction, they won't have it easy listening to their neshama. From all these philosophies that I just mentioned, a new theory was born. And we spoke about that when we spoke about evolution. Darwin's theory was born really as a result of several things. It used to be that the church was very powerful, and they were against science. They were against anything that went against the church beliefs. And of course there was a scientific revolution, which is something to admire, of course, many accomplishments. But this theory, the Darwinian theory, was born in this kind of an atmosphere of materialism and the desire to leave out the neshama and concentrate more on the physical body. Why was this theory accepted and really almost embraced in a fanatic way? It's become like a religion. You know, a lot of scientists, don't tell me anything else. This is it. That's it. This is the only explanation for creation, is evolution. It's become really a blind belief. Why so much? Very simple reason, as I explained before. It's easy. Because if you believe in what Darwin believes, you know what he believes? Akol mikreh. The whole world was created by accident. It's all by chance. And you know what happens when something is by accident? There's no direction. There's no direction. There's nobody telling you what's right and what's wrong. If that's the case, I can do whatever I want. If it wouldn't be for the police, a lot of people would be doing a lot of things. If it wouldn't be for laws, can you imagine what kind of world we'd be living in? So that's what it is. If there's no direction, that means you can do it. Therefore, this is the easiest belief, the easiest religion to accept. You can justify and do anything you want. Who's to say that this is wrong? Who's to say abortion is wrong? If there's no religion, why not? Let the woman decide. Hazar Shalom. She can decide. It's her body, they say. But what about the life? But he's not alive yet. What are you going to say? How are you going to convince him? They want to do whatever is more convenient, because there's no direction, there's no neshama. But what this theory of Darwin really does is it releases human beings from any compunction, is it called in English? Yeah? Of any responsibilities, of having no interest whatsoever in controlling your desires. The only reason why people stop smoking, it's not because it's expensive, because they were finally convinced that it's really hurting them, damaging their lungs. Somehow in this country, in Israel, they're not convinced yet for some reason. They're smoking a lot. There in Europe, they're smoking. But in this country, they really, if you look at what's happening, the trend in the past 20 years, there's less people smoking. They've made it prohibited to smoke in restaurants, in hotels, in planes. So that, of course, may have helped too. But as far as the other tavot, can you try convincing people, you know what, no more steaks. No more beer, no more all the good food. People like all these things. How are you going to convince them? No, for the good of humanity, control yourselves. Don't eat, don't overeat. In America, you can't tell not to overeat. The average American is overweight, they say. All the nash, all the good food, all the chocolates and the candies, and so it's very hard to control yourself, especially when there's no real need. If it wouldn't be for books on diet, you still have a lot of people eating away the whole time. But it's through all this information that's out there that is really geared or directed because of concerns for one's health that people are stopping or controlling themselves. But it's not because they want to have the neshama take control and not the goof. It's for other reasons. So therefore the theory of Darwin and all these theories, this is what they accomplished, is that they've released a lot of people from having any regrets that they've overeaten or what's the word for it? Indulged. Yes, that was the word I was looking for. Overindulged themselves in all these ta'avot, because there's no desire or interest to control it as sin. No control, no desire whatsoever. Yeah.
If someone has all these ta'avot which lead to avarot,
Yeah.
does the avarot encrust the neshamah, so that any concepts, if a friend says, come to a shir, the neshama's been encrusted.
That's what I said before. Yeah. Hashmin leva'am. In other words, people's heart and eyes have become fat. They've become blocked. Like the arteries being blocked, the blood, the oxygen doesn't get through. Yeah, it's a problem, and you really have to chip away at all of that to get them to come, to get them to understand. It's not easy. That's what materialism does. And this kind of course of belief, or this kind of philosophy that you can do what you want, do whatever is good for you, that everything is by mikre, everything is by chance, it's survival of the fittest, it led to Hitler writing Mein Kampf, or his whole belief that what? Let the weaklings die. After all, we're concerned with the survival of the fittest. You should have no ill feelings about defeating the weak, because that is the nature of how things have to be, that the weak are defeated and the stronger ones survive. And you know what he added after that? It was the chutzpah of the Jews to say that one should control his nature. It was the chutzpah of the Jews that one should go against nature, that one should control nature. Mapitoni says, who says to control nature is going against what nature needs to do on its own. Do you see how he's thinking? This is all the same kind of thinking. There's no direction, there's no neshamah, there's nobody telling you what is right or wrong. In conclusion, let's see a little bit the differences between heresy and Judaism. Heresy, or no religion, diminishes the value of man. Man is just another animal. Heresy ignores the human potential for spirituality, whereas Judaism, or Torah Israel, talks about how great man is, how he's the Nezer Abriah, he's the crown of creation, how he can accomplish so much spiritually. Heresy is identified with tanugot, with pleasures, because that is its motto. Do whatever pleases you, really. That's more important than anything else. Whereas Torah Israel is more concerned with what the will of Hashem is, not what pleases me. What a big difference. In the future, or after Ma'avisim, after one leaves this world, the neshama is going to blame the body is going to blame the neshama. And the Midrash speaks about it. Who's going to have to pay the fine? They're both going to have to pay the fine. Mashal lemad davar domeh. What is this compared to? The Midrash says, to a king who had two guards in his field in his orchard. One was blind and one was crippled. The cripple couldn't walk, the blind couldn't see. But it came time for the fruits to ripe, and the cripple wanted to have the fruits for himself. He tells the blind man, you know what? You carry me on your shoulder, and I'll go pick some fruit, and we'll both enjoy it. The king came by the next day and asked, who took my fruit? The cripple said, I couldn't move. The blind said, I couldn't see. And the king says, yeah, but I have a feeling I know what you did. Right? The cripple went on top of the shoulders of the blind. Hashem puts the neshama on the goof and he judges both of them. It is a combination of the two of you that one, of course, commits. The neshama, of course, is giving the right direction. But sometimes, as we said before, that sechel is misled to justify that something is correct. And therefore it suffers as a result of the body exercising the will of the neshama and going in the wrong direction. And it's a combination of the two. The captain gets hurt, and the body, of course, gets hurt. They both have to pay. The other way around is also true. L'atid lavo, why do we have to have Tchiyat HaMetim, which we'll speak about separately? When the dead will rise, why should there be Tchiyat HaMetim? The body has to rise, and the neshama is the main thing. The body worked very, very hard to come to shiurim, to go to pray to a Bet HaKnesset. The body did a lot of mitzvot and ma'asim tovim, so the body also gets sachar. Not only the neshama will be rewarded. So in Tchiyat HaMetim, the body will rise to get its reward, not only the reward of the neshama in Gan Eden. And now we have to figure out, if that's the case, that the neshama is really in charge, or should be in charge, how is it supposed to know what to do? So I'll tell you briefly, basically the way one could know what to do is, since the neshama has no desire for bodily needs, it is completely pure in its interest to do what the will of Hashem is, if we allow it to, right? Anytime one has an attraction or a desire to do a particular mitzvah, a positive deed, very much this one, more than anything else, he should know that good chances that his neshama came into this world, first time or in a reincarnation, to do this mitzvah. This is what it is for its tikkun. The same applies to men who are particularly interested in learning Zohar, learning Gemara, more than anything else. It could be that they've learned other things before, and now this is where they have to specialize. They need to learn everything. You need to know a little bit of everything. But it could be that that is the siman of where they need to emphasize, what they need to spend most of the time. However, when it comes to averot, the Yetzer Hara basically gives you a hard time in a particular area. That could be the siman of what you need to repair. So when it comes to averot, it's whatever is hard for you. When it comes to mitzvot, since there's no Yetzer Hara involved in mitzvot, Yetzer Hara couldn't care less what you do. He doesn't want you to do mitzvot at all. So when it comes to mitzvot, it's the Yetzer Hara pushing you in what one needs to do for this tikkun. When it comes to averot, it is what is difficult, what you're having a hard time overcoming, that is your tikkun. The ultimate success or failure of every human being in this world, Jew or non-Jew, depends on what? On if the neshama won or if the guf won. Who overpowered the other? Who was in control most of the time? And I say most of the time because we all make mistakes. We all sometimes fall. We have aliyot and yeridot. What's important is that we have more triumphs than we have failures. That we will sometimes fail and make a mistake, it's almost unavoidable. But that is what teshuvah is all about, which we'll speak about separately. The importance of teshuvah. It's important that we win more times than we lose. Now, in order to succeed, of course, one needs to have that, as we said before, one needs to have knowledge. And for a Jew, that knowledge comes from the Torah. And that is why it's so important for a Jew to learn the Torah, because Be'ezrat Hashem, it is through the Torah that he will receive the proper direction, and it will allow him to really make the right decision, to be able to distinguish between what is correct and what is not correct. One cannot rely just on his sechel, right? Sechel means the brains, but that is not just the ability to process, that's, the brains. One needs that, which is the information, which is the Torah. By learning Torah, it's still not a guarantee, because people have their bodily and physical needs, that blinds them. They want kavod, they want money, so they might accept bribery. That's against the Torah. You just study Torah. It says so in the Torah. They close their eyes. What did we say before? It's a continuous challenge. And you know what? The greater the man is, kol hagadol mechavero, yisro gadol mimeno. The greater the person is, the greater the tzaddik, greater the neshamah. The more the challenge is there. The Yetzer is after him to make him fall in whatever he can, whatever his weakness may be. It's a continuous challenge for us, for everyone, until one passes away from this world. Until the very last day, don't think he's gone. The Yetzer is there till you kick the bucket, you say in English? Yeah. I don't know why he's kicked the bucket, but until the last second, he's there. Really. He may not be there with the ta'ava of eating, at the age of 95, who wants to eat? Right? But it could, there's a ta'ava for kavod, could be even to the age of 110. Yeah, there's certain ta'avot that continue forever. The benefit, of course, of the Torah is not only in the direction. The benefit of the Torah is also to supply us with the strength to combat the Yetzer Hara. And this is the survival, the true survival of the Jew, is to make sure that the Yetzer HaTov is in control, is in charge. Not to allow the Yetzer Hara to dictate to him what he needs to do. And the best chances for this is, of course, by regularly attending Shiurim of Torah. Dr. Hashem will continue next week. If you have any questions, I'll take them. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not a level playing field. Sometimes somebody's born to a family of B'nai Brak, and it's
Right.
they already have a good foundation, a good starting point.
Right.
Someone who's born to an Amharetz family, they have nobody to teach them. They have no way of,
Yeah.
of learning what's right and wrong.
Well, that's a good question, but when we spoke about the essence of the neshamah, we mentioned that the neshamah in its subconscious, in other words, in its essence, knows what it needs to do, knows right from wrong. The non-Jewish world does not have Torah. How are they supposed to know, right? They only have 7, and those basic 7 are built into the neshama. They're programmed. The neshama is divine. It knows. You just have to listen to it. So if a Jew does not do all the 630 mitzvot because he did not know, nobody's going to come and demand it of him. Like you say, he was born in Siberia. He grew up in Russia. But the basic of being a mensch, like we say in Yiddish, being a good person, doing for others, not just doing for yourself, not thinking only about your physical bodily needs, right? And just pursuing the pleasures of life, but doing for others, that everybody's capable of. It all depends if he's listening to the neshama or not. As I said before, the majority of people, if they don't have that, if they don't have a set of values or morals, they will almost default to the desires of the yetzer instead of what the neshama really wants. But the neshama is there if we only listen to it. Yeah.
I just want to know, in the case of supposing an example,
Yeah.
Mother Teresa,
Right.
how do you analyze it?
There is what we call Hasidei Umot HaOlam, the righteous of the Gentiles. Really good people who not only fulfilled the 7 Noach laws, perhaps they even did more than that. And they were completely devoted to this lofty cause of doing what Hashem wants, and that is for all humanity to be a partner with Him in repairing this world, in making this world the kingdom of Hashem, bringing down Hashem into this world. Everybody is capable of doing that. Unfortunately, humanity has proven itself not interested. Look at all the wars, look at all the murders, look at all the problems, right? Between husband and wife, selfishness. What leads to war most of the time? Everything is selfishness. If people think of themselves like Hitler did, right? In himself, he won't think about others. It's a continuous battle between what you want for yourself and what others need. Are you interested in helping others, or are you more interested in helping yourself? That all depends who wins the war, the neshama or the guf. That's what it all depends on.
In some cases,
Yeah, go ahead.
in some cases
Yeah,
there is this sickness.
maybe another minute. Yeah,
Psychological
yeah,
problem that
yeah.
the people who are manic depressive,
Right. They need medication.
You are exactly like Mother Teresa and doing your things, Sorcha Sibur and all these things. And even they don't know themselves that they are sick.
Yeah. No, anybody who's really kind to others, that does not come from any illness. It really comes from the neshama.
No.
It takes tremendous effort. Yeah.
This sickness of manic, there are so many manic depressive.
Right.
Even they don't know themselves. That they do lots of good things.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
No, listen, I know what you mean. I know you're talking about something else.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously,
So I
obviously they will have some other challenge. We are challenged in many areas. In other words, the test of whether you think of yourself or you think of somebody else, it could be found in many areas, not just in the area of chesed. It could be waking up late at night if your wife asks you, can you take care of the baby? And you only had 2 hours of sleep so far, and you have to wake up early in the morning the next day. I don't care if you're manic depressed. It's not easy to do something like that. You see what I mean? No matter how you put it, there will always be some challenge that one will be able to prove himself, whether he's thinking about himself or he's thinking of the other. And if somebody does not have the correct direction, does not have the dot, does not have a set of higher values or morals, then he will usually do what the yetzer wants. And that is, of course, why we learn Torah, so that we should be able to control the yetzer.